freedom,
family,
world unity.
All these things and more will be discussed on this podcast.
Real stories, real people, real debates. On this podcast, we like to express our freedoms and talk about anything and everything goes.
Like freedom, family is important to us, and anybody that is listening, watching, or coming on the show as a guest star are all considered part of the greatest family to ever bless the solar system, the human race. No matter who you are, where you come from, you will always have a voice here on this podcast.
We like to flex our First Amendment, where all speeches and opinions are accepted for the right of freedom of speech. We have a saying we like to live by. Live life with eyes wide open. Being open-minded leads to true understanding of the world as it really is. Please, come, join us, and enjoy this experience as we embark on this journey of truth as we dismantle the subjective truth. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And you're experiencing high consciousness.
Disclaimer. Any and all information on topics presented are to the best of all who is present in each episode's knowledge. The goal of this podcast is to bring people together and set the example we all wish to see in our everyday lives. Whether it's home life, education, politics, history, business, etc., any and all subjects can and will be talked and peacefully debated about on this podcast. On debate episodes, there will be a set rules of debate that hosts and guests alike must follow. We ask that you, the audience, like we ask of our guests, in the comments to please try to keep the language as clean as possible. We are a podcast for entertainment as well as educational purposes. Here, we are all equal no matter what race, age, or gender. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Hi,
y'all, and welcome back to another episode
of High Consciousness. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria, and we are
High Consciousness.
Welcome back to another episode, everybody. Today is Monday, or it could be Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Thursday, whatever day you're watching this on, but usually on Mondays, it is Constitution Day. So, we are going to be reading the Silence Dogood letters of Benjamin Franklin and the Constitution. 1.4 today is going to be the Silence Dogood letters, 9 through 11. Or shorter, because our good host Nick here has to go to work today. So we got to keep our pod on a really tight schedule today. So if it ends up being a little shorter than you like, well, I'm sorry. But we'll continue on Monday, though, with the rest of the Silence Dogood letters. So stick around for that added content. Mm-hmm. And anyway, little recap on last week's Silence Dogood letters.
Last week's Silence Dogood letters was that she was mad, not necessarily mad, but was proclaiming for freedom of speech and liberty. And these later episodes, and these, not episodes, but these letters are going more and more detail for our fundamentals of freedom in America. How Silence is pointing out all her critics and
how they're prideful, and she attacked pride, and how, pride often come before
the fall.
Mm-hmm. But apparently the full phrase is pride come before destruction. Pride goeth before destruction, and destruction goes before the fall, or destruction comes before the fall, or something like that. So,
regardless,
basically saying that if you're prideful, you will end up destroying yourself, and in the process of destroying yourself, you will fall. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, you fall because your business went flat, or you fall because, you fell flat on your face because you failed in life, or you fall from grace.
Pretty much.
So, now, let's get into it. The Silence Dogood letters, 9 through 11, if not shorter, because we're on a time frame here today. Let's get into it. Constitution 1.4. So, July 23rd is the date, 1722. Silence Dogood letter, number 9. The piece of Latin that we have here at the top is Corruptio optimi e pessima. Ooh.
Corruption.
Optimal corruption is something. What does pessima mean? I can actually read.
Probably
I can actually read some of that.
Probably means it's a pest.
So let's take a trip to the Matrix. Let's see, what is it? Pessima. Meaning. Lowest or worst state of affairs. Ooh, so corruption is the lowest state.
Lowest or the worst?
The lowest and the worst state.
Not and. It could mean as the
Or.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Corruptio. I think it says prima, right? No, optimi.
Optimi means.
Optimi es pessima.
There it is right there.
The corruption of the best is the worst of all. Meaning the corruption of our leaders is the worst thing that can happen. That's interesting. To the author of the New England Courant. Sir, it has been for some time a question with me whether a commonwealth suffers more by hypocritical pretenders to religion or by the openly profane. But some late thoughts of this nature have inclined me to think that the hypocrite is the most dangerous person of the two, especially if he sustains a post in the government, and we consider his conduct as it regards the public. The first artifice of the state hypocrite is by a few savory expressions which cost him nothing, to betray the best men in his country to an opinion of his goodness. And if the country wherein lives is noted for the purity of religion, he is more easily gains his end, and consequently may more justly be exposed and detested. A notoriously profane person in a private capacity ruins himself, and perhaps forwards the destruction of a few of his equals. See, that's what we were talking about in the recap about the last letters, how pride and destruction, all that. Mm-hmm. And now with pride and destruction, we have corruption that goes hand in hand with it.
Mm-hmm.
A public hypocrite every day deceives his betters and makes them ignorant trumpeters of his supposed godliness. They take him for a saint and pass him for one without considering that they are, as it were, the instruments of public mischief out of conscience, and ruin their country for God's sake. And this political description of a hypocrite may, for aught I know, be taken for a new doctrine by some of your readers, but let them consider that a little religion and a little honesty goes away in courts. 'Tis not inconsistent with charity to distrust a religious man in power. Though he may be a good man, he has many temptations to propagate public destruction for personal advantages and security. And if his natural temper be covetous and his actions often contradict his pious discourse, we may with great reason conclude that he has some other design in his religion besides barely getting into heaven. Ooh, so yeah, with pride comes corruption, comes destruction, comes the fall from grace. Wow. But the most dangerous hypocrite in a commonwealth is one who leaves the gospel for the sake of the law. Ooh, so a preacher man leaving the gospels or leaving the church in order to pursue a career in politics, yeah. A man compounded of law and gospel is able to cheat a whole country with his religion, then destroy them under color of law. And here the clergy are in great danger of being deceived, and the people of being deceived by the clergy, until the monster arrives to such power and wealth that he is out of the reach of both, and can oppress the people without their blind assistance. Dude, this sounds like today's time she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's what Benjamin Franklin is talking about here as our alias under Silence Dogood. That's impressive. And it is a sad observation that when people too late to see their error, yet the clergy still persist in their encomiums and on the hypocrite, and he happens to die for the good of his country without leaving behind him the memory of one good action. He shall be sure to have his funeral sermons stuffed with pious expressions which he dropped at such a time, and at such a place, and on such an occasion, that which nothing can be more prejudicial to the interest of religion, nor indeed to the memory of the person deceased. The reason of this blindness in the clergy is because they are honorably supported as they ought to be by their people, and see nor feel nothing of the oppression which is obvious and burdensome to everyone else. But this subject raises in me an indignation not to be borne, and if we have had, or are like to have any instances of this nature in New England, by setting the deceivers in a true light, and undeceiving the deceived, however such discoveries may be represented by the ignorant or designing enemies of our peace and safety. I shall conclude with a paragraph or two from an ingenious political writer in the London Journal, to better convince your readers that public destruction may be easily carried on by hypocritical pretenders to religion. A raging passion for immoderate gain had made man universally and intensely hard-hearted. They were everywhere devouring one another, and yet the directors and their accomplices, who were acting instruments of all this outrageous madness and mischief, set up for the wonderful pious persons while they were defying Almighty God, and plundering men, for they set apart a fund of subscriptions for charitable uses, that is, they mercilessly made whole people beggars, and charitably supported a few necessitous and worthless favorites. I doubt not that if the villainy had gone on with success, they would have had their names handed down to posterity with encomiums, and the names of the other public robbers have been. We have historians and ode makers now living, very proper for such a task. It is certain that most people did at one time believe the directors may be of great and worthy persons, and in an honest country clergyman told me last summer upon the road that Sir John was an excellent public-spirited person, for that he had beautified his chancel. Upon the whole, we must not judge of one another by their best actions, since the worst of men do some good, and all men make fine professions, but we must judge of men by the whole of their conduct and the effects of it. Thorough honesty requires great and long proof, since many a man through long thought honest has a length proved a knave. Since many a man long thought honest has a length proved a knave. A knave is pretty much like someone who is naive or doesn't know better. They're very new to things. Or as us gamers would say, total noob. And it is from judging without proof or false proof that mankind continue unhappy. I am, sir, your humble servant, Silence Dogood. Wow. So that one just went on and on and on
about corruption.
And how there's corruption in the church.
And
there's
hypocrisy.
Corruption in the...
And hypocrisy.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy within our political realm, even then. And in Old England as well, where they all came from.
Where they're trying to get away from.
Yeah, exactly what they're trying to get away from. But yet they find it even coming here, right then, in our little colonies while we're still under English rule. So I guess that makes sense, that the corruption and hypocrisy of church and state type kind of things, which is why our forefathers made sure that church and state were separate rather than together.
Right.
Because church and state make things a lot easier to be corruptible. So, Silence Dogood letter number 10. August 13th, 1722. Silence Dogood number 10. Optime societas hominem servibitur. Sic. Societies...
Harmony.
Hominem
ponies harmony.
Here, hold that. Take it deep into the matrix. Another one. Because I really want to know what that means, because I kind of can read it, but I just don't know what it means. Like, I get a good idea. Like, something tells me that this is, like, society, optimal, harmony, in service.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I get from that.
Well, English and Latin are two of the same. Harmony.
Hominum.
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 Can I get a hominum?
Serbator? Serbitur.
Serbitur.
And then...
Cease. Sick.
I don't know what sick means.
Hmm.
Okay. Translate. Really?
Yeah, you ain't gonna get it.
Oh, come on! Copy. Did that. Paste. Oops. Paste. The society of men will be best served. That's what that means. See, there was something about society and, you know, men. I knew hominin means, like, human. Or humankind. Something like that. To the author of the New England Courant, Sir, discoursing lately with an intimate friend of mine of the lamentable condition of widows, he put into my hands a book wherein the ingenious author proposes, I think, a certain method for their relief. I have often thought of some such project for their benefit myself, and intended to communicate my thoughts to the public. But to prefer my own proposals to what follows would be rather an argument of vanity in me than goodwill to the many hundreds of my fellow sufferers now in New England. We have, says he, abundance of women who have been bred well, lived well, ruined in a few years, and perhaps left young, with a house full of children and nothing to support them, which falls generally upon the wives of the inferior clergy or of the shopkeepers and artificers. We marry wives with perhaps €300 to €1,000 portion, and can settle no jointure upon them. Either they are extravagant and idle and waste it, or trade decays or losses, or 1,000 contingencies happen to bring a tradesman to poverty, and he breaks. The poor young woman, it may be, has 3 or 4 children and is driven to 1,000 shifts, while he lies in the mint or friars under the dilemma of a statute of bankrupt. But if he dies, then she is absolutely undone unless she has friends to go to. Suppose an office to be erected to be called an office of insurance for widows, upon the following conditions. 2,000 women, for their husbands for them, enter their names into a register to be kept for that purpose, with the names, age, and trade of their husbands, with the place of their abode, paying at the time of their entering 5s. Down with the firsts forward per quarter. The what? So, I guess that's the way that they used to, keep logs, like 4 days.
Yes, 4
days. They always got paid on the first. Maybe, I don't know. Because it literally says paying at the time of their entering 5s, down with 1s, 4D period per quarter. I don't know what that means. And we don't have a whole lot of time to go and look it up. That's interesting. So, which is to be the setting up of a support of office with clerks and all proper officers for the same, and there are no maintaining such without change. And they receive every one of them as a certificate, sealed by the secretary of the office and signed by the governors for the articles hereafter mentioned. Any one of the women becomes a widow at any time after 6 months from the date of her subscription, upon due notice given, and claim made at the office in form as shall be directed. She shall receive within 6 months after the claim made a sum of €500 in money without any deductions, saving some small fees to the officers which the trustees must settle, that they may be known. In consideration of this, every woman so subscribing obliges herself to pay as often as any member of the society becomes a widow. The due proportion or share allotted to her pay rewards the 500 euros for the said widow, providing her share does not exceed the sum of fives. Okay, so I guess that's like fives as in like fives, tens, hundreds, stuff like that. So the fives would refer to sums of 500 euros every time. So the firsts would probably be like 100
like
euros, or maybe it's like the first day of the month or something. I don't know.
Rent,
pretty much. The seaman or soldier wives, well, the sum of fives, like, this is the kind of, like, I guess this is where our first, life insurance policies came from.
in a sense.
Because, like it says here, the widows, like, when their husbands died, they get that 500, sums, within the first 6 months of their husband dying and them being subscribed to this registry and stuff because their husband died. So it's like, a settlement payment for the death of a loved one, an inheritance settlement. This is where they came from, I guess. No seamen or soldiers' wives to be accepted into such proposal as this on the account before mentioned, because the contingencies of their lives are not equal to others, unless they will admit this general exception, supposing they do not die out of the kingdom. It also might be an exception that if the widow claimed had really bona fide left her husband to her own use, clear of all debts and legacies, 2,000 euros she should have to claim. An intent being to aid the poor, not to add to the rich, but there lies a great many objections against such an article, as 1. It may tempt some to forswear themselves. 2. People will order their wills as to defraud the exception. One exception must be made, and that is either very unequal matches, as when a woman of 19 marries an old man of 70, or women who have infirm husbands, I mean known and publicly so. To remedy which, 2 things had to be done. 1. The office must have moving officers without doors who shall inform themselves of such matters, and if any such circumstances appear, the office should have 14 days' time to return their money and declare their subscriptions void. 2. No women whose husband had any visible distemper should claim under a year after her subscription. One grand objection against this proposal, how you will oblige people to pay either their subscription or their quarterage. To this answer, I by no compulsion, though that might be performed too, but altogether voluntary, only with this argument to move it, that they do not continue their payments, they lose the benefit of their past contributions. I know it lies as a fair objection against such projects as this, that the number of claims are so uncertain that nobody knows what they engage in when they subscribe, for so many may die annually out of 2,000, as may perhaps make my payment 20 euros or 25 per annual. And if a woman happen to pay that for 20 years, though she receives 500 at last, she is a great loser. But if she dies before her husband, she has lessened his estate considerably and brought upon a great loss upon him. First, I say to this, that I would have such a proposal as this be so fair and easy, that if any person who had subscribed found the payments too high, and the claims fall too often, it should be at their liberty at any time, upon notice given, to be released and stand obliged no longer. And if so, volenti non fit injura. Everyone knows best what their own circumstances will bear. In the next place, because death is a contingency, no man can directly calculate, and all that subscribe must take the hazard. And yet prejudice against this notion may not be built on wrong grounds. Let's examine a little bit of the probable hazard, and see how many shall die annually out of the 2,000 subscribers, according by the common proportion of burials to the number of living. Sir William Petty, we've heard of him before, in his political arithmetic, by a very ingenious calculation, brings the account of burials in London to be 1 in 40 annually, and proves by it the proper rules of proportion computation. And I'll take my scheme from there. If then 1 in 40 of all people in England should die, then suppose 50 to die every year out of 2,000 subscribers. And for a woman to contribute fives to every one, she would for a woman to contribute fives to every one would certainly be to agree to pay 12 euros and tens per annual upon her husband's life, to receive $500 when he died, or 500 euros when he died, and lose it if she died first. And yet this would not be a hazard beyond reason too great for the gain. But I shall offer some reasons to prove this to be impossible in our case. First, Sir William Petty allows the city of London to contain about 1 million people, and our yearly bill of mortality never yet amounted to 25,000 in the most sickly years we've had, plague years excepted, and sometimes but to 20,000, which is 1 in 50. Now it is to be considered here that children and ancient people make up with one another at least 1/3 of our bills of mortality. And our assurances lies upon none in the middling age of the people, which is the only age wherein life is anything steady, and if that be allowed, there cannot die by his computation above 1 in 80 of such people every year. But because I would be sure to leave the room for casualty, I'll allow 1 in 50 die. 1 in 50 shall die out of our number subscribed. Secondly, it must be allowed that our payments, failing due only on the death of husbands, this is 1 in 50, must not be reckoned upon the 2,000, for 'tis to be supposed to at least as many women shall die as men, and then there is nothing to pay, and so that 1 in 50 upon 1,000 is the most that I suppose shall claim the contribution in a year, but which I suppose shall claim the contribution in a year, which is 20 claims a year at fives each, and is €5 per annual. And if a woman pays this for 20 years and claims at last, she is gainer enough and no extraordinary loser if she never claims it at all. And I verily believe any office might undertake to demand at all adventures not above €6 per annual, and secure the subscriber €500 in case she come to claim as a widow. I would leave this to the consideration of all those who are concerned for their own and for their neighbors' temporal happiness, and I am humbly of opinion that the country is ripe for such friendly societies whereby every man might help another. Without any disservice to himself, we may have charitable gentlemen who yearly give liberally to the poor, and when they can, they better sow their charity than on those who have become. They better bestow their charity than on those who become so by providence, or for aught they know on themselves. But above all, the clergy have the most need of coming into such project as this. They, as well as poor men, according to the proverb, generally abound in children. And how many clergymen in the country are forced to labor in their fields and keep themselves in a condition above want? How then shall they be able to leave anything for their forsaken, dejected, and almost forgotten wives and children? For my own part, I have nothing left to live on, and contentment and a few cows. And though I cannot expect to be relieved by this project, yet it would be no small satisfaction to me to see it put in practice for the benefit of others. I am, sir, and etc. Silence Dogood. Wow.
And that will do us in, folks, for this, because we are out of time.
Yep, we are out of time. Our good host Nicholas here has to get his booty on to work today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but those two letters, our first letter was about corruption and how corruption can lead to being a hypocrites can lead into being lead into corruption
in both the church and the political states.
Mm-hmm. Because the most dangerous man is a man that's of religion and law, because he can manipulate both fields and basically have everyone be his own pawns, is what the first letter was going into. In letter 10, believe it or not, Silas Dogood, a.k.a. Benjamin Franklin, did one things that we all want our modern day leaders to do. Give us a problem solution. A solution to the problem of health insurance. And legitimately gave us 5 or 6 different scenarios of how this went, but how it should go with the year.
Well, it seemed like with Silas Dogood or with our Benjamin Franklin here, it seems like there is no life insurance policy for women after their husbands die. So it's like their husband can die, but now they're left with no
nothing.
money because women at that time, they could not get jobs. They didn't have the right to go to school or to university. So they were pretty much stuck at home with the children, no income after husband died. And then, that would be the downfall of many, many homes.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're having to send your male child, out to work because you, as the grown adult woman,
can't work
because of the laws written by men.
Mm-hmm.
So how to rectify that is like, okay, men, if you don't want women working or going to university to make money, then we should have some kind of insurance policy for after her husband dies, so that way she can carry on the household.
Mm-hmm. Life insurance
policies.
So, with that,
and that is all for today. Constitution and Other Writings 1.4 has come to a close. Thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, hit that like and subscribe button. Remember to follow us on all of our channels. We are on YouTube and Rumble as our video platforms, and then we have our social platforms, that is X, Twitter, and... X used to be Twitter. What am I thinking? X, Facebook, and Truth Social. Please follow us and hit subscribe, hit the notification bells so that you're always alerted when we drop something new.
And leave that comment, and leave something in the comments too.
Yeah, what questions do you have? What did you find the most interesting between the 2 letters? What parts stuck out to you the most? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, the descriptions for the book is always in the links down below, as well for all of our socials.
Mm-hmm. And with that, we tell y'all to live life
with eyes wide open. Have a good day, y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.